답한 것 같아요. 외로워서 씁니다. 어쩌면 외로움에 직면하는 일, 그게 용기 있는 사람이 할 수 있는 일 중에 하나잖아요. 그것들을 저는 매번 백지 위에서 하고 있는지도 모르겠습니다. 작품이 외국어로 번역되는 과정에서 기억나는 에피소드나 경험이 있을까요? 우리나라에서 내일 다음 날을 가리켜서 모레라고 하고, 바닷가에 가면 모래사장이 또 있잖아요. 그 모래와 모래는 발음은 거의 유사하죠. 이런 것들이 시에 들어가면 어떤 운율을 형성하는데, 번역이 되면 이 모래와 이 모래는 멀어질 수밖에 없습니다. 불가능에 가까워 보였던 것을 어떤 식으로 만들어낸 번역자분들께 경의를 표하게 되면서 2배로 더 기뻐지는 것 같습니다. 라는 이름이 있었다가 일본에 출간되기 위해 일본 시장을 겨냥해 수정된 부분이 있을까요? 다행히도 일본에는 히라가나 가타가나 말고도 소리 나는 대로 받아 적는 다른 어떤 또 그 요소가 있다고 하더라고요. 그래서 말놀이 부분에는 그걸 변기함으로써 사람들에게 읽는 재미를 놓치지 않게 했기 때문에 그렇게 일본 시장을 겨냥해서 수정된 부분은 없었다고 말씀드릴 수 있겠습니다. 가장 추천하고 싶은 시인님의 책은 무엇인가요? 네, 이 시집입니다. 없음의 대명사라는 시집이고, 대명사를 가지고 시를 쓰니까 오히려 시를 해석할 때 독자의 어떤 선택과 독자가 더 능동적으로 해야 되는 역할들이 늘어나는 것 같더라고요. 그래서 뭔가 이 시집을 읽을 때 많은 분들이 각자의 대명사 속에서 보통명사를 찾는 일을 하셨으면 좋겠어서 이 시집을 추천하고자 합니다. 작가님이 쓰신 시 중 하나가 인류의 마지막 기록으로 남게 된다면 어떤 시를 선택하실 건가요? 그 이유도 부탁드립니다. 말놀이 애드리브라는 제목의 시가 있어요. 그런 시인으로서의 어떤 삶을 시작하게 해준 시이기도 하고, 시 쓰는 일이 정말 재미있는 놀이구나. 그 놀이는 매번 규칙이 달라지고 내가 만들 수도 있고 규칙을 만들면서 위반할 수도 있는 장르가 시라는 것을 발견하게 준 시여서 그 시를 추천하고 싶습니다. 독자라는 말은 읽는 사람이라는 뜻이잖아요. 저도 읽었기 때문에 쓰는 사람이 되었거든요. 꾸준히 읽다가 뭔가 해소되지 않은 감정이나 전하고 싶은 이야기가 있으면 그것들을 차곡차곡 쌓아 올렸다가 나중에는 쓰기로 이어졌으면 하는 바람을 담아보고 싶었습니다. 함께 해주셔서 감사합니다.
In our headlines on this Friday, July 11th, here in South Korea. The first high-level diplomatic talks among Seoul, Washington and Tokyo since the launch of the Lee Jae-myung administration took place in Malaysia on this Friday on the sidelines of the ASEAN-related meetings. Meanwhile, the local stock market maintains its momentum, soaring to levels unseen in almost 4 years as investors bet on prospects of favorable policy transitions and continued strong performance in the chip market. And South Korea's minimum wage for next year is set at 10,320 won per hour, up 2.9% from the current rate in a unanimous decision among labor, management and the public, the first in 17 years. We start with news out of Malaysia, where the first high-level diplomatic talks among Seoul, Washington and Tokyo since the launch of the Lee Jae-myung administration took place. I have our foreign affairs correspondent Oh Soo-young standing by live with the latest. Soo-young, welcome. So I hear this trilateral diplomatic interaction, Soo-young, was not arranged in advance and came about rather unexpectedly. Could you tell us more?
Sure, Sunny. Good afternoon, by the way. So South Korea's first Vice Foreign Minister Park Geun-ju held trilateral talks with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Japanese Foreign Minister Hangeul on the sidelines of the ASEAN-related meetings in Kuala Lumpur on Friday. Now, their talks lasted for about 40 minutes. And according to the Foreign Ministry statement, which was just released, actually, they reaffirmed the importance of their trilateral cooperation and agreed to jointly counter North Korea's illicit cyber activities and deepening military cooperation with Russia. Now, they also reaffirmed their shared commitment to North Korea's complete denuclearization. Now, this comes as Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov is due to visit Pyongyang after the ASEAN sessions on Friday for, quote, strategic discussions. Now, according to Marco Rubio's office, they also discussed their, quote, indispensable trilateral partnership in the resilience of critical technologies, supply chains, energy, trusted digital infrastructure and shipbuilding. Now, Vice Minister Park is also believed to have conveyed South Korea's position on ongoing tariff negotiations with the United States. Both Seoul and Tokyo recently received letters from President Trump notifying them that Washington will impose 25% reciprocal tariffs on August 1st. Now, the three sides met on a ministerial level for the last time in April at the NATO Foreign Ministers meeting in Brussels. But this is the first trilateral senior-level meeting of diplomats under the Lee Jae-myung administration. And as you said, the trilateral was rather unexpected, as Vice Minister Park is attending in the place of South Korea's yet-to-be-confirmed Foreign Minister nominee Cho Hyun. So the fact that this meeting was held, despite Park's deputy status, arguably signifies Washington and Tokyo's strong commitment to this trilateral cooperation and their diplomacy with Seoul.
Right. Soo-young, now those talks among diplomats there from the three countries, of course, took place on the margins of multiple meetings this week led by the ASEAN. Soo-young, could you walk us through some of them?
Yes, of course. So South Korea's Vice Minister is attending key discussions on Friday, the East Asia Summit, the ASEAN Regional Forum itself, and Seoul's dialogue with ministers from Mekong countries. On Thursday, Park took part in a meeting of ASEAN and its three Northeast Asian partners, which include South Korea, Japan and China. He emphasized Seoul's commitment to strengthening trilateral cooperation with Tokyo and Beijing in a way that complements ASEAN's goals, especially amid rising uncertainty and challenges in the Indo-Pacific region. Now, earlier in the day, Park took part in the Korea-ASEAN Foreign Ministers meeting to adopt an updated 5-year plan to fulfill this comprehensive strategic partnership reached last year. Now, this new action plan includes words like peace, not just security, as well as cooperation on the Korean Peninsula, along with cybersecurity, maritime issues and digital transition.
Right, I see. All right, Soo-young, thank you for the coverage of the trilateral ministerial gathering as well as more in Malaysia among diplomats from Seoul, Tokyo and Washington. Thank you for that report. Moving forward then, back here in this part of the world on this Friday, a trilateral ad-drill took place over international waters of the southern island of Jeju. South Korea's KF-16 and Japan's F-2 fighters were joined by at least one US B-52H bomber, marking the latter's first deployment to the Korean peninsula this year. The training comes in line with a three-way meeting here in Seoul among top military officers, that is, from the three countries earlier this morning. Admiral Kim Myung-soo stressed the significance of the trilateral partnership amid the threats posed by North Korea's nuclear weapons and missile ambitions. Now, his U.S. counterpart, General Dan Kane, also highlighted the importance of the security cooperation to strengthen deterrence against an unprecedented military buildup by North Korea and China. Meanwhile, where security is concerned, conflict prevention is better than crisis response. Now, this is according to President Lee Jae-myung during his first National Security Council meeting back on Thursday that touched upon North Korea and more. Our presidential office correspondent Song Yoo-jin reports.
South Korean President Lee Jae-myung says peaceful coexistence with North Korea is, quote, the most realistic and practical path to safeguarding national security. He made the remarks during his first National Security Council meeting on Thursday. The president has already taken steps to de-escalate tensions, including suspending loudspeaker broadcasts along the inter-Korean border, a move that prompted the North to halt its propaganda campaign. The administration says it aims to build on that momentum.
The government will do everything it can to help people feel the Korean peninsula is becoming more peaceful and secure. There were discussions on ways to restore severed communication channels and links between the two Koreas.
This is in line with how President Lee views the path to safety.
The president noted that in matters of security, prevention is always more important than responding afterward.
When asked whether the meeting covered trade talks with the United States, Kang said the discussions explored a range of options, with national interests as the top priority. South Korea is pursuing what it calls a package deal, which was discussed earlier this week in Washington between National Security Advisor Wi Sung-rak and his American counterpart, Marco Rubio.
Talks include issues across the board, including trade, investment, purchasing goods, and security. We suggested taking all this into a package to make progress in negotiations.
Thursday's meeting, which lasted over 2 hours, was attended by the Prime Minister, senior officials from the Ministries of Foreign Affairs, Unification, Defense, and Interior, as well as the National Intelligence Service and the Office of National Security. Song Yoo-jin, Arirang News.
And President Lee Jae-myung appointed his ministers for culture and land earlier on this Friday, completing his roster of all 19 members of his first cabinet. Our correspondent Yoon Jung-min tells us who they are.
President Lee Jae-myung has tapped Choi Hui-young, current CEO of travel platform Noor Universe, to lead the nation's Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism. The journalist-turned-CEO has brought enough experience to materialize President Lee's vision of a K-culture market worth 300 trillion won, which is worth some $218 billion. That's according to Lee's chief of staff, Kang Hoon-sik, on Friday. The same day, the ruling Democratic Party of Korea's lawmaker Kim Yoon-duk was named to lead the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport. The three-term lawmaker has served on the National Assembly's Land, Infrastructure and Transport Committee, in which Kang says he has proven competency in legislation and policy.
When it comes to real estate, he is expected to approach the issues from ordinary people's perspectives, not as a scholar or bureaucrat.
President Lee Jae-myung has warned of zero tolerance on speculation in real estate, often leading to housing market instability. The new land minister's focus will also be on balanced regional growth, while putting forth new visions for transportation and mobility, among others. With Friday's announcement, the appointment of the nominees for the Lee administration's first cabinet has been completed.
President Lee said he expects all government ministries to yield results in a speedy manner with competence and loyalty. He asked them to break away from customs in a bold manner and lead changes with fresh and flexible ideas for innovation in the society.
Kang went on to say the new administration will proactively take on pending issues, such as the U.S. pressure on tariffs, extreme heat at home, and the economy in the doldrums. The nominees will undergo confirmation hearings at the National Assembly, but they are not required to be approved for appointment. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
U.S. tariff threats appear to be doing little to dampen investor sentiment in the local stock market, with the KOSPI soaring past the 3,200 mark at one point during trade on this Friday afternoon, before closing its session slightly lower. Our correspondent Kim Do-yeon covers the latest rally and more.
The benchmark KOSPI once again hit a new yearly high during intraday trading on Friday, surpassing the 3,200 mark briefly for the first time in 3 years and 10 months, at one point reaching 3,216. But it was a mixed trend as it fell later to close at 3,175.77, following a strong sell-off by foreign and institutional investors that caused it to briefly turn negative during the session. Boosted by overnight gains in shares of U.S. tech, major Korean semiconductor stocks saw simultaneous strength. SK Hynix rose more than 3% during the session, briefly surpassing the 300,000 Korean won mark for the first time. The KOSDAQ also opened slightly higher and reclaimed the 800 level during intraday trading for the first time in 12 sessions. The total market capitalization also surpassed 3,000 trillion won for the first time. While there are some concerns about a breather after the rapid short-term rally, the overall view is that upward momentum remains intact.
It seems that continued expectations for the new administration's policies are still prompting some market funds to flow into the stock market. In addition, hopes for further discussions, such as on dividend taxes following the recent amendments to the Commercial Act, also appear to be having a positive impact on the domestic stock market.
This comes after Thursday when the KOSPI closed at 3,183.23, its highest finish in 3 years and 10 months. Comparing Friday's close to the lowest of the year on April 9th, the KOSPI is up around 38.5% in a matter of 3 months. With reciprocal tariffs from the U.S. scheduled to take effect next month, the market largely believes these concerns have already been priced in. Expectations for interest rate cuts and an additional stock market stimulus are also seen as supporting investor sentiment. The previous all-time high for the KOSPI was 3,316.08 points, recorded on June 25, 2021, and hopes are growing in the securities industry that this level could be surpassed soon. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
And Bitcoin continued its rally to hit yet another high over the past 24 hours. According to US-based crypto exchange Coinbase, Bitcoin hit $116,474 at 5:40 p.m. on Thursday U.S. Eastern Time. Pundits are linking the recent rally to steady capital inflows into exchange-traded funds and the growing presence of companies adopting cryptocurrency as an asset. South Korea's hourly minimum wage has been set at 10,321 starting next year, up 2.9% from the current rate, in a unanimous decision among the labor, management and the public, the first in 17 years. Our Kim Bo-kyung reports.
Starting next year, the hourly minimum wage would be 10,320 Korean won, around $7.50. This as the Minimum Wage Commission reached an agreement on Thursday to raise the minimum wage by 290 Korean won, that is 2.9% from this year's minimum wage of 10,030 Korean won per hour. If one works a standard monthly workload of 209 hours, the new minimum wage translates to a monthly income of 2,156,881. The commission is made up of 9 representatives, each from labor, management, and the general public, obliged to review the new minimum wage by mid-July for the labor minister to make a formal announcement by early August every year. This year's decision marks the first agreement reached among the 3 sides in 17 years. If an agreement cannot be made, the increase is decided by majority vote. The 2.9% increase is the lowest first-year hike under any administration since 2000, though minimum wage increases tend to be higher than average in the first year of a new administration. During first year of the Moon Jae-in administration, the minimum wage was raised by more than 16%, while for the first year of the Yoon Suk-yeol administration, it went up by 5%. The management side said they agreed to the decision after much deliberation.
It was a very difficult decision, made based on the thought that it would be better to support harmony and unity as the new government begins, rather than create more conflict.
While the labor side said the government should come up with measures to help low-paid workers.
It would be the Lee Jae-myung administration's task to deal with any areas that are insufficient. It must come up with strong measures to help low-wage workers cover their living costs.
After the commission submits an agreed minimum wage for next year to the Labor Ministry, the ministry will finalize and announce it by August 5th after the review process. The new rate will take effect starting the very first day of January next year. The presidential office called the commission's decision significant and added that the government will actively ensure the minimum wage is followed through promotion, guidance, and supervision. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
On the international front, Ukraine was the center of talks between the heads of NATO and the White House on Thursday amid a fresh onslaught of aerial assaults by Russia in recent days. Our Lee Seung-jae has the latest.
NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte and U.S. President Donald Trump held phone talks on Thursday to discuss the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine. According to Rutte on X, he spoke with the U.S. leader to condemn Russia's recent large-scale airstrikes on Ukraine and urged the U.S. and other allies to provide emergency support to Ukraine. The phone talks come as Russia recently conducted airstrikes on Kyiv, killing 2 and injuring 25 others. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio held talks with his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov on Thursday in Malaysia. During the talks, the 2 sides exchanged new ideas for peace in Ukraine.
I think it's a new and a different approach. Again, I wouldn't characterize it as something that guarantees a peace, but it's a concept that we'll take back to the president today and here as soon as I finish with you.
During the talks, Rubio reportedly expressed Washington's frustration that more progress has not been made on ending the war in Ukraine. Rubio says he had expressed to his Russian counterpart what President Trump has stressed about there not being enough flexibility on the Russian side to bring about an end to the conflict. In the hopes of coordinating a multinational reassurance force ready to help Ukraine after a potential ceasefire, a new headquarters in Paris will serve as the base for the Western-led Coalition of the Willing for 1 year. The announcement comes as a virtual meeting of the member nations' leaders, including French President Emmanuel Macron, Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, and other European leaders took place on Thursday. The headquarters in the French capital is led jointly by France and the UK and will rotate to London after a year in order to allow for flexible military contributions from partner nations. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
In other news now, we are looking ahead to the weekend. And for those of you here seeking a meaningful indoor activity away from the scorching sun, do consider a visit to the Seoul Calligraphy Art Museum that is hosting a special showcase of Hangeul in memory of a master Hangeul calligrapher. Our Pyeongbo was there.
Geometric beauty and fluid structure, materialized in black ink. Korean calligraphy, or Hangeul Seo, is an art form rooted in rhythm, balance, and the expressive power of the written line. Hangeul offers a unique aesthetic language of its own, one that is now being rediscovered as a distinct art form. A new retrospective at the Seoul Arts Center shines a spotlight on this very tradition through the work of a master who dedicated his entire career to breaking away from the better-known Chinese characters and elevating Hangul calligraphy into high art. Pyeongbo Seo Hee-hwan.
Master Seo Hee-hwan's artist pseudonym, Pyeongbo, meaning to walk steadily without rest, was given by his teacher, Son Jae-hyung. It reflects the idea that even slow progress leads to mastery, as long as you don't stop.
Although he was the first artist to receive the Presidential Prize for a work of Hangul calligraphy, his work also drew criticism for resembling his teacher's style. Seo accepted the critique and embarked on a journey to find his own voice. That journey began with the return to the roots of Hangul. In a section titled Deep-Rooted Tree, we see how Seo turned to early printed text from the time of King Sejong. This is Seo Hee-hwan's interpretation of Worin Cheongangjigok, or Songs of the Moon's Reflection on a Thousand Rivers. Originally compiled by King Sejong, the creator of Hangul, it's a Buddhist hymn book dedicated to his late wife, Queen Seoul. The interpretation by Seo Hee-hwan contains around 10,000 Hangul characters on a single folding screen. By studying the typeface-like Panbonche styles from early Joseon, Seo grounded himself in the fundamentals of Hangul and gradually shaped a calligraphic language that was uniquely his own. He explored more artistic styles as well, like this piece where the brush naturally flows into the next character. Commemorating 30 years since Seo's passing, the exhibition runs until mid-October at the Seoul Calligraphy Art Museum Gallery, and there are also programs where visitors can try their hand at Hangul calligraphy. This retrospective gives visitors the chance to see up front that Hangul Seoye is more than just writing. It's visual art, where each stroke carries emotion and history. Pyeongyang, Arirang News.
And more than 10 K-pop artists and producers have been added to the National Academy of Recording Arts and Sciences, making them eligible to vote in the Grammy Awards. According to Korean entertainment company HYBE, 16 of its artists and producers, including Chico and Slow Rabbit, will be able to cast their ballots starting from the 68th Grammys next February. Now, some of the current members with the right to vote include all members of BTS. The Recording Academy selects new members each year through evaluations by current members.
This is The World Now, bringing you the latest stories from around the globe. In the United States, a federal judge in New Hampshire has issued a nationwide preliminary injunction blocking President Donald Trump's executive order aimed at ending birthright citizenship. Judge Joseph LaPlante ruled on Thursday that when such an order is in effect, it would prevent tens of thousands of newborns, an estimated 150,000 annually, from obtaining automatic citizenship, violating the 14th Amendment's guarantee. The judge referenced the Supreme Court's recent guidance that limits the use of nationwide injunctions but allows class action mechanisms to protect constitutional rights. The judge also certified a class action lawsuit on behalf of U.S.-born children who will be impacted. The injunction applies to all U.S.-born children after February 20th, 2025. Supporters of birthright citizenship hailed the decision, while the White House called it judicially excessive. In Europe, Greece has temporarily halted processing asylum applications from migrants arriving by sea from North Africa. Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis, addressing Parliament on July 9th, stated that the suspension will last an initial 3 months, citing a surge of more than 7,300 arrivals on the islands of Crete and Gavdos so far this year, compared to just over 5,000 in all of 2024. The arrivals, mainly from Sudan, Egypt, and Bangladesh, have been transiting through Libya. Mitsotakis described the move as an emergency response and authorized the swift return of those entering the country illegally. The government is also strengthening cooperation with Libyan authorities and deploying patrol vessels. Humanitarian groups denounced the policy as illegal and inhumane. The UN Refugee Agency also expressed serious concern, saying the right to seek asylum is a fundamental human right.
An original Hermes Birkin bag designed in 1984 for Jane Birkin sold at Sotheby's Paris on Thursday for approximately $10 million, setting a new record as the most expensive handbag ever auctioned. The starting price was slightly over $1 million, with a Japanese collector winning the bid over the phone. The leather handbag, created after Birkin famously sketched it on an airplane sick bag, bears her initials JB and a fixed shoulder strap, unlike commercially sold models. Worn by Birkin for nearly 9 years, the bag was originally auctioned in 1994 to benefit HIV/AIDS charities and subsequently sold in 2000. Finally, Thailand's beloved pygmy hippo Mudang turned 1 year old on Thursday at Khao Keo Open Zoo in Chonburi, marking her first birthday with a 4-day celebration. The festivities kicked off with over 12,000 visitors on day 1, including fans who traveled from abroad, and free entry for children under 12. Activities included a 20-kilogram tropical fruit cake, a parade, and photo exhibitions of Mudang. Mudang, whose name translates to bouncy pork, has sparked global social media fascination since her birth on July 10, 2024, drawing millions of views and boosting zoo visits. Choi Ji-hee, Arirang News.
Today, Seoul's morning temperature dropped to 24.6 degrees Celsius, which is the first time in 12 days that we have escaped from the tropical nights. However, there are still many places in the west of the country which saw tropical nights. For the time being, tropical nights will continue. There is extremely hot weather during the day as heat wave warnings continue in the west of the country. The daytime temperature soared to 36 degrees in Seoul today. This coast took a break from the heat. This heat wave will continue mainly in western areas tomorrow. Morning will start warm tomorrow at 20 to 25 degrees Celsius across the country. Daily highs will move up to 36 degrees in Seoul, Gyeongju, Busan, Jeju, 30 degrees. There's rain forecast on Jeju Island during this weekend. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Coming up next is our daily panel session. Do stay with us.
Your gateway to Korea, Simply K-pop. Hello, I'm your Simply K-pop MC Taewi of AB6. Let's go. Then this week's Simply K-pop, Gateway to Korea, don't miss out!
Change the way you start skincare. 7 vegan peptide, maximum benefits for your skin. And amplify the effect of the next skincare step. Boosting, glowing, and brightening. Effortless care. Visible results. 7 vegan peptide booster. Mizone.
미래를 준비하는 코딩 교육 전문가.
On Press Perspective today, we touch upon the growing popularity of Korean food overseas and the impact of economic barriers on falling birth rates. Do stay with us. Hello and welcome to Press Perspective for this Friday. Now today, that is July 11th, is World Population Day, an annual occasion to raise awareness about universal population matters. We touch upon some of those issues in our panel session today, but first we talk about the growing presence of Korean food overseas. For more on this, I have Celia Ferretti with French daily Le Croix here in the studio. Celia, welcome back.
Glad to be here.
I also have writer Colin Marshall with the pundit's take on today's topics. Colin, it's great to have you here.
Great to be in an air-conditioned studio today.
Right, for sure. Celia, we will start with you. So American media claim that Korean food seems to be everywhere in the US. Would you say this is also the trend over in Europe?
Yeah, absolutely. Korean food is gaining ground in Europe as well, although perhaps not maybe at the same speed as the US. We're still a little bit backward on that. But what we're seeing is a sort of ripple effect from the growing interest abroad about Korean culture, to the Korean wave, the Hallyu. It could be Korean drama, Korean cinema, Korean movies, music, and food we see now. And in the US, for example, Korean cuisine has exploded from fine dining, winning awards, to just a regular restaurant or snacks on the streets. Especially we can see on social media, and I think social media plays a big role into exporting Korean culture. You can see on TikTok people showing the new discoveries or the best restaurant they know. And recently I saw some TikToks for the corn dogs, very famous here in even the baseball stadium or everywhere in the street. And now it's getting popular also abroad. And in France, for example, in Paris, the numbers of Korean restaurants maybe have tripled over like the last 5 years. So you have a lot more restaurants. Still, I have to say the menu last time I checked were not as representative of all the Korean cuisine. I think it's because the ingredients are hard to find abroad. So it's mostly bibimbap and barbecue, which is good enough to take a first grasp of the Korean cuisine. Noting also there's more Korean mart, so people can also try to make their own food at home. You can buy tteokbokki, you can buy all the Korean ingredients as best as you can. So yeah, in cities in Europe like Paris, Berlin, London, there's growing demand for Korean cuisine, growing numbers of restaurants. We still haven't catch the pace of the US. We haven't seen the frozen gimbap that made a lot of headlines last year. But yeah, I would say it's becoming part of the mainstream culinary world.
Right. Now, Colin, and feel free to correct me if I get my facts wrong, but as recently as about a decade ago, Korean cuisine was considered maybe an acquired taste, but it seems like in recent years, the global palate for Korean food has been growing. How do you explain this shift, if you will?
Broadly speaking, that's the shift that's happened, certainly. And about 10 years ago is when I moved here to Korea. I was living in the US before this, in Koreatown, in Los Angeles, in fact. So in Los Angeles, because of Koreatown and the large number of Koreans, there was a relatively high awareness of Korean food. It was the cool thing, one of the cool things to eat, if you were in the know. And there was a food critic, Jonathan Gold, who was very well respected at that time. He died a few years ago, who was always talking up Korean food. So if you were into food in Los Angeles, you read Jonathan Gold, and he was always on about Korean food. So you'd be tapped in if you were culinarily aware there. Now, if you got the farther you got out of Koreatown, the less awareness there was. And yes, you're right, Korean food was still something people often hadn't tried, or they didn't know what to imagine. They knew what Korea was, but if they heard Korean food, they wouldn't quite know, the image of a certain dish wouldn't come to mind. Like, there was no taco, there was no sushi, there was no clearly distinct reference point visually. But Korean barbecue became more popular, and then they'd see sort of, if you watched Korean dramas, you'd see other dishes, you'd want to try them. And I think by now, I wouldn't say most Americans have tried Korean food, but they know it's something that can be had. When I was living in the US, even outside of Koreatown, in places where there were Koreans, you could find Korean restaurants, and reliably they'd be good, because the clientele was almost entirely Korean at that time. So it was safe. If you liked Korean food, any Korean restaurant, with some exceptions, was going to be pretty good. Now we can contrast that to a cuisine like Thai food. And there's actually been a program called I think it's called the Global Thai Program, started in about 2002, where the Thai government, the government of Thailand, funded or provided incentives for Thais to start Thai restaurants abroad. So there's been a huge proliferation. There were quite a few before then in the US, but after that, it's become one of the most popular genres of foreign food in America. It's something everybody practically eats, Thai food. And commensurately, the average Thai restaurant is, I don't think I'm shocking anybody by saying, not very good in the United States. So there is a sense in which you can go too far. You can really push a cuisine out into the world, and it just becomes, I don't know if watered down is the right word, but the average Thai meal in the US is bland. Not a lot of reflections of regional flavors of the regions of Thailand. Just it's all the same stuff, and focused around certain dishes that were kind of invented recently in Thailand, sometimes to make rice go farther, like the pad thai, the noodles. That was a push by the government to make rice just sort of go farther, to not deplete the rice stocks so much. So there are good Thai restaurants in the US, but when you really are trying to promote a cuisine abroad, there are risks that come with it. And that aside, I think the adoption of Korean cuisine into the daily sort of culinary interests of Americans has to do with the flavors. Some say that Korean food can be too spicy for foreigners. Sometimes that's true, sometimes not. But also it's a culture of how you eat. And as I've lived here, as I say, for a decade in Korea, I already liked sort of sharing dishes with people. But now it's become, oh, this is the way you should eat. This is the way to eat. You order a bunch of things, or you make a bunch of dishes, you put them in the middle, and you all share them. Like, that's natural to me, and I think it's becoming more natural to more and more Americans or other Westerners. And in fact, I had a French meal the other day here in Korea where everybody was Korean but me, and sure enough, we ordered a bunch of things, and just, we had our boeuf bourguignon, we had, even risotto came out as well, but it was all in the center, we were all sharing, it was all good.
Right, sharing is caring.
Indeed, so they say.
All right, well, let's move now from food to fertility. Celia, the UN Population Fund says that social and economic barriers, not choice, are behind the fertility crisis worldwide. wide. First of all, Celia, could you start off by telling us a bit about the agency's findings? And secondly, to what extent do you agree with the findings, keeping in mind, of course, the situation here in South Korea?
Yeah, of course, the UN Population Fund's latest report reframes what we often call a fertility crisis, saying the real crisis isn't the low birth rate, but the fact that millions of people are unable to make the choice to have kids because of limitation, constraints, especially on infrastructure. Drawing from a global survey across 14 countries, the UN finds that financial pressures are the #1 barrier to parenthood, with nearly 40% of respondents saying that they cannot afford to have one baby. And concern about job security, climate change, and gender inequality also ranks high. Now, if we take a look at South Korea itself, this diagnosis is very close to the situation here. The country has the world's lowest fertility rate, but the surveys here constantly show that among many young Koreans, they want children, but they just feel they cannot afford it or they don't have the opportunity to get one. I think the housing crisis really blocks sort of young couples to get a bigger apartment with a spare room so they can have kids. That's a big problem for young couples. And also, I would say the infrastructures that go around parenthood. It could be a daycare, nurseries, which are existent but in so few numbers that is really hard when you have a job, when both parents are working. Nobody can really take the time off to take care of a kid at home because it takes a lot of time. So all these small infrastructures that are very needed are lacking right now in Korea, and that makes an infrastructure issue blocking parents that would want to get a kid, but they just simply cannot. So I would say, yes, I quite agree with the UN report on that. It's not a lack of will, it's really a lack of structure that would accompany the parents. And the last years, government has been implementing a lot of money, and money sure helps, especially with a housing crisis, but it's not the only answers, and maybe some more structural change should be done in order to allow parents to have kids.
Right. Colin, this particular report also shows that 4 out of 10 people in their 50s and above saying they would have liked to have more children than they actually did. What do you suppose are the broader implications of this overall sentiment?
Yes, part of this report was the regret element, you could say, where you had people who were somewhat older saying they wished they'd had more kids. There was also another section of it, another finding that I think it was 1 out of 5 or thereabouts as well, saying of younger people saying they didn't think they would be able to have as many kids as they wanted to. And so you have it sort of coming from both ends. And part of this, well, with the older people regretting not having more kids, there's the aspect of your preferences changing over time. You want one thing at one part of life, one thing at another, and it's hard to make those align if you're always acting according to the desires of that moment. That's the human condition. I don't know how much we can change that. But as well, this is something that one of the officials was quoted as saying in the documentation, in the report. She said that not necessarily more and more, but too many people feel they are unable to have the family that they want. So the family they want was an interesting phrase to me, that they have a specific set of parameters. This is what I want or need in a family, and if I can't have this, then I'm not going to do it. That's understandable. That's a way of thinking. That's the way we approach anything today in modernity. Like, I want this, how do I get it? How do I make it happen? If I can't make it happen, maybe I'll do something else. But it's not the way it's been for most of human history. Most of human history, you weren't getting the family you weren't thinking about what you wanted, you got the family you got, right? It happened apart from your own preferences for the most part. And there's more bad sides than good to that, you could say. But one bad side of changing that, of fixing it, you could say, is that now we have all these population problems, birth rate problems we're talking about all over the world. But expectations have risen. We can focus on that, where before having a lot of kids was always good because you needed them. They were economic assets and you were going to have them anyway, probably. that was the way it was. Now it's more like you consider the costs. Oh, each kid is going to cost me a lot because I want them to do this, that, and the other. I want them to have this level of status in society, or I want them to go abroad. I want, there are many wants, and the more wants you have, the harder those are going to be, not just to satisfy, but to even believe you can satisfy. So you might just have so many wants or perceived requirements. Like in a society like South Korea, there are many of those as well. Oh, you have to do this. You have to go to this specific part of Seoul to go to school. It just can feel like, well, why bother? If I can't check all these boxes, I might as well not even try. And I think we're seeing that phenomenon to different degrees in different societies all over the developed world.
Right. And for the sake of comparison, Celia, what can you tell us about the French birth rate and the measures there to deal with it?
France, like South Korea, is also grappling with a sustained decline in birth rate. In 2024, the country recorded just 600,000 births, the lowest since the Second World War. And for the second consecutive year, the number fell below the symbolic 700,000 mark. The fertility rate dropped to 1.62 children per woman. It's now the lowest since 1919. And of course, compared to Korea, it's still a big number, and France still remains one of the most fertile countries in Europe, thanks to long pro-family policies and subsidized childcare, generous parental leave, and that's the sort of thing I was saying, the infrastructures around parenthood that is lacking in Korea. And France developed them quite a while ago to really make parents access services that would help them to raise a family from 1 to 3 or 4 kids. My parents, I'm the fourth and last kids of my family, so even a big family can make it work with all the services around. And French President Emmanuel Macron called for a demographic rearmament, saying that now that the birth rate is declining, there should be more policies to encourage families. One solution, and we have seen it a lot, and it really helped in France, is the immigration. France, thanks to a lot of immigration, has a population still growing. Even though parents now have less kids, more people come and choose to live in France, which stabilize the decline of population. In fact, net migration now outweighs natural population growth, the increase. So there's more migrants than people being born in France. And it's a shift we see more also in overall Europe. I would say in Germany is quite similar. Germany also has a declining birth rate, but a lot of population immigrating. So overall, while France faces its own demographic challenges, they would say more supports in place and immigration policy also make it so that the population decline is not so much unbearable as it could be in Korea.
Right. And Colin, what has been shared about the Lee Jae-myung administration's policy for the population?
Well, Lee Jae-myung has looked to France as well, as a matter of fact. One of the proposals he's put out there is to do with what's been called in English the family coefficient. The idea is that the more members of the family you have, taxable income is divided among those members, and so taxable income per capita falls, and so that, in a sense, you pay less tax. The more kids you have, you can pay less tax because you had more kids. That, in addition to much has been said about the payments the government gives in Korea to families who have more kids. One of those payments, I think, currently is something on the order of 100,000 won a month, and he wants to bring it up to 200,000. Neither are large amounts of money, let's face it, but better than nothing. And as well, there have been policies he's discussed even before the election, in the run-up to the election. In the campaign, he was talking about raising credit limits for families with more kids, making credit more available, essentially, the larger a family you have. But, and I see it on other countries' social media as well. This point often gets made. When you think of the cost, or the way people think of the cost of having a child, it's not just the cost to raise them, but the opportunity cost of not working or working less, and then all the money that money could make. The money you didn't earn could itself make money invested. So you take that all together, that's a much larger number than any government has been paying. So people say, like, maybe the payments can work, maybe payments can reverse a falling birth rate, but it probably has to be a lot more than any government is considering or would consider. So look elsewhere as well for solutions, I would say. That's my advice to the Lee Jae-myung government.
Right. We still have a few minutes left, and we've covered all our base today. And that being said, Celia, I'd like to touch upon something you covered recently. I understand you wrote a piece on the use of medication here in South Korea for weight loss. Could you tell us a bit about your coverage?
Indeed, now since October 2024, it's now possible to get a prescription in Korea for the Wegovy. It's a Danish weight loss drug that has been used in the US also before, and maybe people are familiar with the Ozempic. It's basically the same thing. It's a drug made basically for people suffering from diabetes or obesity, but nowadays people use it because they want to lose some weight, even if they're not considered obese or suffering from diabetes. And the trend has been growing and growing in Korea, and since it was available on the market, the Wegovy was sold to almost $250 million. It's not even a year, so it's really growing and growing, and there's some question about whether it is a good trend, because we know Korea is really obsessed with beauty, and being thin here is really important. And people were saying that, especially doctors were saying, there might be some abuse, and that would have some consequences on the health of the client, the customers, because the drug is not made for people with a normal weight or just a little bit overweight. It's made for people in a clear medical condition that should be treated by a doctor, maybe at a hospital. It should not be used just to lose a little bit of weight because we don't feel comfortable with it. That's the main issue. And doctors here, there's a whole group chat on Kakao Talk to exchange addresses of doctors that would be willing to give the medication without really looking at what they're doing. So it's a big problem. It's a big market that is currently now difficult to regulate because it's not refunded by the Social Security. So there's not really control about how it is. And it sells for a lot of money. It's around 400,000 won for 1 month's worth of medication. So it's a big market. For now, still uncontrolled, not really looked on by the government. And doctors are raising the problem that if young people, maybe teenagers or people in their 20s, that feel uncomfortable with their body and with their weight, would get into that. We don't know what could be the consequences on health. There's no major second effect, but maybe it could have some effect on the mental stability of young people that would be too obsessed with their weight and getting into medication that is not normally made for them.
Right. Colin, there are some pundits who claim that, and they're claiming this, we're not saying that it's a fact, that Korea or people in Korea may be a bit too obsessed with physical appearances. What are your observations?
It's a common topic for foreign writers, foreign observers in Korea. I myself have written about the plastic surgery culture here, trying to cast a skeptical eye on it, you might say. But some have told me this is a bit of a legacy in a way of the phenomenon of, or the tradition of Gwansang, or the physiognomy, face reading. People, of course, publicly will say that's all superstition. I don't believe in it. But will also adjust their own, pay money to adjust their own features in ways that might be read by others in a more favorable way. Not that they're doing, physiognomy intense, but it's just like, oh, this person seems more trustworthy. This is somebody I can hire because they have these certain features. There are stories that come out from Korea in the Western press about daughters being promised if they get into a good college, we're going to buy you plastic surgery. These are 18-year-old kids. This is the kind of thing that can surprise, to say the least, foreign readers. And I often say, when I first was staying in Korea, first visiting, I woke up in the morning, went out to get a coffee, and I passed up the first 4 coffee shops I saw because they were all inside plastic surgery clinics. I was staying in Apgujeong, so to be fair, that's where you would expect that. But I do notice as well, for all the plastic surgery, standards of dress have fallen markedly since I've been living here for young people. Their self-presentation is not quite as neat as it used to be. They're not quite as well put together. They seem messier. They seem more American, let's face it. So in some ways, Korea is starting to feel a little more like the country that I left. But the focus on appearance, it's oftentimes very trend-driven. So when I talk about plastic surgery or talk about anything to do with the way you present yourself in Korea, it's usually about conforming to some kind of trend or another. A certain type of eye might be popular one year, but not the next. And like many foreigners, I can't tell the difference between the eye surgeries, whether someone has it or not. So in a way, I'm not the true expert, but those have been my observations so far.
Right. Well, thank you for sharing them. I'm afraid that's all the time also. Colin, thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you.
And Celia, thank you very much for your time and your thoughts. Right, that ends this week's editions of Press Perspective. Thank you for watching. Have a great weekend and do join us again same time next Monday for more panel sessions with our foreign correspondents.